here at Indoindians.com. And today we are very pleased to have with us Deepika Mulchandani. Deepika is an advisor to a mental health platform and app based in India. And she actively supports a community of parents and mothers here in Indonesia who wish to grow their knowledge of self-healing, emotional resourcing, and learn helpful insights as a parent from a connected place. Deepika, in fact, is a very accomplished and trained person in mental health. She has many degrees. She's a somatic psychotherapist and relationship consultant. And she's also founder of the Open Connections in Singapore. It was very interesting for me to learn that at the age of 24, she had chronic pain, fibromyalgia, a chronic pain condition, and how through the process of recovery, she has learned how interconnected our mind, body, relationships, and environments are. So over to Deepika. Hi, Deepika, welcome.
Hi, thank you so much for having me here and for organizing this. Poonam has been fabulous in putting this together, and I hope to share something useful today with everybody. And let me just share the slides perhaps, and then I'll...
So we are all looking forward to how to have a wonderful 2021 with Deepika, with her, her insights and maybe some pointers on what we can each apply in our lives. So Deepika, we're looking, So I've made you the co-host and just go ahead.
Great. Yeah. Thank you for bringing the title back in, Living Our Best Self in 2021. And I think last year for so many of us, it has been such an interesting time because we learned that the more, we are so used to getting things done externally. We are so used to, having things, and we experience a time where we actually can't. So we are at home with ourselves, and a lot of us went through so many significant challenges. And as a mental health practitioner, I noticed the spike in people seeking mental health help, which is a good thing. Which is a useful thing, because then people are starting to realize that there is a way of living that can be better, that can be more useful for ourselves.
Yes.
So that is in short, like the whole content of today. And I hope to share some skills with all of you. I'll share the slides and then I'll take it from there. So we are guided today.
So as you mentioned, Deepika, you will have certain spaces where you will stop for question and answer.
That's right. Yes, there will be a space to reflect a little bit. So if you have pen and paper on you, please go ahead and do that. And then towards the end, we'll take some questions. And if there are any questions in between, Poonam, that you feel is relevant, I'm happy to answer them in between.
Okay, so please, I invite everybody to just type in their questions, which I will convey to Deepika.
Yeah, thank you so much. Okay, so I'll just share the screen quickly so we are guided in what we're talking about. Okay, so this is the title, Living Your Best Self in 2021. And I've put there as a subtitle, a connection-based approach to mental and relational wellness. Why that? Because I think the way I practice psychotherapy now is very much informed by education for sure, by clinical experience. And the third part of it, which is what I was sharing with Poonam earlier, is from personal experience. Because mental health now, we know, thanks to neuroscience research, we now know it is a bigger thing than just a thinking issue, than just a mental or a cognitive problem. It is also something that is very much connected to our relational quality, our family attachment, and also our body processes. So there's so much to cover, but I will not go into theoretical details today, but I'll share a very big overview. But if anybody watching here in the webinar or in YouTube, Facebook are interested in understanding more, I'm very happy to be contacted. So this is a little bit about me, so you know who I am, what I do. So Deepika Mulchandani is my name, and I'm the founder of the Open Connections. The Open Connections is basically a clinic that is registered in Singapore, where we do psychological services and we also do training work. So I'm here in Bali at the moment, not intending to make anybody jealous, sharing the happiness of being here. And also a colleague of mine runs it in Singapore. So we're both of us working in tandem. And the second thing is I'm also an advisor to a mental health app called Hey. This is something really exciting. It's launching next week in India. And it is an app that will allow more and more people to get mental health help easily, because it can keep them anonymous as well. And they can actually just reach out to the right professionals and also regular people who are interested to be trained in the first aid skills of how to support somebody in distress. So that's the second part of the thing that keeps me busy. So the third one is a clinical and body-based psychotherapist for children, adolescents, and adults. And I also do relationship parenting and family therapy and support. So like I said earlier, my practice is very much informed by the fact that our mental health is very dependent on how we can sense into our body, hence the body-based work. And the other part is our relationship, parenting, and our early attachments in life. How did we attach prenatal all the way to 5 years old actually is one of the most significant time in our life that actually shapes our resilience in life, that shapes our ability to be our best self. Now, but that doesn't mean that we can't begin where we are. You know, knowing what we know now, we can actually grow towards firming up how we work with our body to be able to live a life that's more connected. And I use the word connected a lot because why? First is we are able to then sense into our body a lot more. And as a result of that, we actually can be in relationships in a healthier way. So I'll talk about that more as we get along. And the last bit is I'm also a yoga teacher in training. So I use quite a bit of yoga movement stuff in therapy as well. Not so much teaching yoga techniques, but more of using the movement to facilitate us feeling better from things like depression and anxiety. So this is an article that I had written for Core Collective Singapore, and this is my personal story of recovery from fibromyalgia symptoms. Now, this is not to say that everybody's recovery is going to look the same, but this is to suggest that when we think about chronic illnesses and pain in a bigger way, there are better chances that we will tap into more resources for recovery. So this was the purpose of me writing the article. This is available at my Instagram at Deepika Mulchandani. I'll share that later. So, and basically the whole point of bringing this up here is basically this whole process of experiencing fibromyalgia brought me to the understanding that it overlaps very much with mental health issue. Like the medications are actually the same as well. What is prescribed for someone with anxiety/depression is also prescribed to somebody experiencing chronic pain a lot of times. So because of that overlap, that actually tells us that our body's hormonal system, immune system, they are actually in tandem. It's just that for some people, it becomes a chronic pain pathway. For somebody else, it becomes a mental health pathway. So knowing that and having a bigger perspective about that can help us a lot to start to find places of healing and connections for ourselves. So if you're interested, you can go to my Instagram and read more about this, or you can Google fibromyalgia at Core Collective, and it should actually come quite quickly there. So now this is where a reflection space, right? For all of you in the webinar, or if you're watching me through YouTube or Facebook, if you have a pen and paper on you, or even if you don't, it can be a visualization process, right? When I ask you, like, what is a best self? What is you as a person, as a human being? What does it look like? And what does it feel like for you to be in a best state? If you want, you can take a couple of minutes here to visualize that. I'll give you some pictures to help you in case this resonates with you. Is this something you would consider a best self? And this can be very unique and very individual. So there's no right or wrong responses here. So I'll give you a minute to visualize what is me as a person in a best self. And if anyone would like to share in the chat of, you know, what do you think it is for you, I'm happy to read that as well. What is the best? What comes to mind when you think of you being a best self, in a best state?
It's a feeling of well-being and enthusiasm.
Right. That's what comes up for you. Well-being, enthusiasm. Right. Energy for life.
Yeah.
Yeah. Great. Okay, I'll bring the picture back. Right. So if there's no one else, I'll share, and feel free to keep writing along in the chat if anybody would like to add, right? So typically when I meet people, like those who come to me for therapy or for a consultation, they typically say, oh, I want to be a better mother. I want to be a happy mother. I want to be a successful professional. I want to exist and enjoy my relationship. I want to feel good in my body. I want to make time for my well-being and my sports, etc. So these are all really normal human desires, isn't it? We all want to be filled with energy. We want to be filled with enthusiasm. We want to live a life we like. And many of us at the same time struggle with this, right? Many of us actually, you may or may not identify with this picture, but a lot of people who come to me for help, they're like, I am anything but happy. Not that I don't have things. A lot of them are professionals, a lot of them are moms, entrepreneurs, but they have this constant state where, you know, whether it's diagnosed or not is another thing, like anxiety, depression, but it's a constant state of being like upregulated is the word that I'm using, which means that we are like, we are there. And it becomes difficult to have a time where we can feel connected, and we can feel comfortable, and we can feel okay being with ourselves. And the other part is okay being in all the different relationships and commitments that we are a part of. And for some people, interestingly, that has become very normalized. I've learned it's become like a culture almost. Like I've been in Singapore, like working in corporate culture. It's become normalized to be upregulated, but there are so many people who are also exhausted with that process, right? We go like, oh my gosh, why can't I just feel, you know, more present in my life, more available, and more and enjoying the relationships that I'm in, like what's actually going on for me. And is this normal? Is it normal to be upregulated? And this whole purpose of sharing this webinar today and designing workshops around that is to actually share some fundamental learnings from, you know, neuroscience, from relationship, from attachment theory on what's going on with us actually as people. What's the struggle about, you know? And this is, I'm going to bring back the slide a little bit. These are the definitions from different schools, because psychology actually has like 400 over theories. I'm only choosing 3. So that we are, you know, focused on which one we're talking about. So if I were to ask someone from a positive psychology school, like, what do you think is a good state of being for a person? The answer is actually our increased capacity to feel pleasant. Not that we never feel bad ever, because that's not realistic, but that we have an increased capacity to kind of move from the anxiety base or the depression base to a pleasant emotions. The capacity kind of becomes bigger. And everybody has different capacities for this as well, because we are so complex in our psychological, neurological makeup. So this is an ability to move that direction tells us that, okay, we are in a relatively good state of being, means we are regulated. Now, from a mindfulness-based cognitive approach, the response would be an increased capacity to be in the present moment, to be connected to where we are, to be connected to the people that we are with, like to be connected to our environment, and to have a personal sense of meaning in life. So there is a general sense of contentment according to the mindfulness school, like that school of thought. Now there's another one which is on a relationship research done. It's a very longitudinal study, like by this, I'll get the name of the doctor and send if anybody's interested, but he did I think it was over a 70 years period of study, where he said, like, what is it that helps people feel good in life? What is it that tells people that they're actually liking their life? And his study actually showed very significantly, and because it's such a long study, so the findings are quite prominent, just because they were able to carry through the study from childhood all the way into old age. And the significant predictor of a good life is actually a capacity to feel connected in relationships. The capacity to go back to the people we love, whether it's our partners, husbands, children, or even a community, you know, where we actually have an increased capacity to feel love, to be loving, and to enjoy both emotional and physical intimacy. Now, this doesn't mean that there's no gaps in it at all. This means that we can switch. That switch happens a lot faster from being upset and being upregulated to being connected. And I'll talk about this switch in a bit, that you know, tells us what's actually going on when we are struggling to actually make that switch from upregulation to connection, anxiety based to connection based. What's actually going on in us? So this was an interesting discovery for me as well. Right. So very quickly here, if so many of us, if not all of us, wants to be in a good state of being, what's happening at a body level that doesn't allow for it? So this is when the stress response system comes into play. So we have a whole stress response from our brain stem all the way to our body. And this stress response is actually shaped by our environment a lot, also by genetics, epigenetics, but also environmental, means our relationship, our exposure since we were a child. Research even goes back all the way to prenatal. So now many of us can have an overdrive stress response system, which means that, and the triggers could be different. Maybe for me, it could be even something as simple as a loud noise that I was sharing with Poonam just before we started, that I had chronic pain for so long. So even like if there's a loud noise, like a loud construction noise, that is enough to actually, get me off balance, to actually bring the irritability all the way up. Like it could be that simple sometimes if we are aware, or it could be something bigger like an actual financial stress or a relational stress, or our children, are not doing well in school, anything. So that stress response systems gets triggered depending on different triggers. Now, I want to be really clear here. That doesn't mean that we are defective. That doesn't mean that we are something is wrong with us. It just means that many of us, since we are children, we have not been taught, right? It's not part of our school curriculum to learn how to work with our body so that we can actually help our own stress response system. So we can actually work with our body in a way that decreases this from becoming too charged, because stress is a part of life. Things will happen. When we go to school, we have academic goals, we have achievement goals, we have teachers who are not happy with us today. We have all kinds of things. And that is an ongoing process in life. But now the question always becomes, are we subjected to that, or there are things we can do that is a little bit more within our own power to begin to shift, not a miracle cure, but to begin to shift this upregulation to connection, right? And this can be a big, and the entry path can be many, and I'll share one with you, which I'm familiar with, on how can we start this process towards not eliminating stress, but allowing stress to be there, but we at the same time learning to work with our body so we can stay in that stress without being overwhelmed and overdriven by it necessarily. Right. So the first thing, these are all the different, it's not comprehensive by any means, but this is a good way for us to start to think about it. Like, how do we move to an upregulated state? How do we get an anxious response in our body that takes us away from that best self picture that we want, right? So the triggers are many. Sometimes it's an internal body functioning, which means that we are already, some of us have a digestion thing, we have an autoimmune, like I had chronic pain. For me, that one was such a big trigger to put me into anxiety because the pain was so real. The pain was very, it was there, like I can't run away from it. So that's a trigger to feel anxious. For somebody else, it could be a relationship trigger. It could be, maybe it's a conflict at home, conflict at work. Like I said, children are not doing well in school. So something along those lines can give us the anxious response. And the other bit is environmental, which is, like I said, even something as simple as a noise, like constant noise, can put our body into a stress state. So these are just all the different triggers that can actually push us to get an anxious response. Doesn't mean this is bad. This is just us understanding that, okay, when I'm exposed to these things, it is quite likely that I can get an anxious response in my body, right? Oops. All right, so now the question is, what happens to our body under stress? All right, never mind the complex figure on the right. So you can focus on this thing. I'm going to introduce this word to you, which is called the vagal brake. The vagal brake is, the idea is that there is a vagus nerve in our body, which is very powerful. It basically runs from our brain stem and it runs all the way to above diaphragm and even our facial features. It actually is the regulator. Keep it simple, it's the regulator that actually moves you from anxious to connected. And that is the one, and that's actually located along our back. So it's like runs from the back, at the back of our head, all the way to our above diaphragm. And then there's a dorsal one that runs below, but I'll leave that for now. So this vagal brake is very key, we have found, in regulating stress. What it does is when we are, okay, I'll give a scenario to explain this. All right, so this is, for example, we're a child, right? For example, we are a 3-year-old and we have a fall as a child. So
Sorry,
now obviously,
Deepika, I've
yeah.
just got a message saying that somebody can't hear you.
Oh.
Deepika, can you, Geeta, can you let us know if you can hear me?
Now it started. Now again started. The voice went away earlier.
Thank
see.
You.
Okay.
Perfect.
Deepika, can you start again, please?
Sure.
Yeah, thank you.
Sure. Thank you for that. Okay, hopefully it's better now. Yeah, okay. So this is an example of this vagal brake. I'll just put it in a story because I find we process stories a lot better. So for example, we are a child, we are 3-year-old, and then we have a fall and our body goes into distress, right? That's normal. We have a fall, it goes into distress. Now, what happens at that stage? So for example, somebody, which is typically your parent, comes and actually attends to you and says, oh, something happened, oh, that's okay. So that is a process that is called co-regulation, which means that the parent and the child are working together to calm the child down and be okay with the fall. So in that state, the vagal nervous system behind actually learns how to regulate, because there's two people now. There's a child struggling, and then there is the parent who is distressed. No, the parent who is more stable. So the parent's nervous system interacts with the child and then relaxes the child's body. That's how we learn. So the vagal brake kind of operates over there. It becomes thicker. The sheath, it's called a sheath, like the sheath becomes thicker, and the vagal brake can switch and go, okay, now it's time for the body to relax. So that activates our ventral, it's called the ventral system, and then we calm down. So for example, we are still that child and we find ourselves alone. So we are managing that fall alone. Then our body takes a bit longer to actually go into balanced state, which means we take a little bit more time because we're on our own. It's learning to manage itself. There is nobody else's nervous system who is working to strengthen our vagus nerve in that setting, right? That's the second scenario. Now, the third one, if somebody goes, okay, stop crying, don't worry too much about it, it's not a big deal. If that is the kind of response we get, then the stress state actually goes up a little bit more. So because we are doing two things, first is we are already in pain, that's already body stress. We are already like, managing the pain of it. And now there's somebody else who is not happy that we are crying, right? So then there's a double, there's a two response to that. And as a child, what we do is we stop crying. So that kind of puts the body into sympathetic. So there you go. Right. So these are the three nervous systems that has become really interesting in the world of neuroscience. So from when we are regulated, our vagal, we can go into ventral, because that is very much the premise of connection and communication. So if I'm in pain, somebody comes along, this person stabilizes me as a child, then my body learns how to calm itself down and my vagal brake improves. Right now, if that doesn't happen, I can go into either of the two. Sympathetic is the one that is the anxious, typically it's the, I'm generalizing a little bit here, but this is the one that keeps us anxious. It's like, okay, there's nobody here, I'm all alone. So my body kind of adjusts itself. That's how beautiful our body is. Like, it actually works in amazing ways to adjust itself to manage the situation. And then that puts us into a sympathetic state, right? And then the last one is dorsal. Dorsal is typically when we get lethargic, when we have maybe exhausted our anxiety to we have become very anxious, and then we don't have, and there's a switch where we become immediately lethargic. So that's how the dorsal functions. But our focus today is on ventral and sympathetic, basically. So, but if you identify with the dorsal, I'm happy to answer questions as well on this one, if you did have any. But the point for today is to actually show us how important it is and how significant our vagus nerve is, which is now being used a lot more in even something like craniosacral therapy. Like it makes use of the cranium, and the vagus nerve functions a lot more. Okay, let me bring back. Right, so this is what I was talking about earlier, basically. So this is how our vagal break is very influenced by relationships. So I said earlier in the, when we started, that our body is, mental health is so connected to the development of our nervous system. And this development of our nervous system is so connected to our, the connections that we have in our lives, especially in our early life. So how is this all connected? So past experiences of stress, especially when we are at our prenatal stage to 5 years old, our wake or break is strengthened when we have connection from caregivers. We may or may not have memories of it, and that's fine. It doesn't mean that if we don't remember, it didn't happen, but our body just kind of registers those messages. Every time we are in stress, our body kind of have its own mechanism on what to do. Like some people actually tend to eat a lot. Like if you've noticed yourself, like if I'm stressed, I eat a lot. For some people, we eat less, right? And for someone else, we go exercising. For someone else, we need to sleep. So all that is our body's unique way of operating when we experience stress and pressure from outside. And as we get older and the more we understand how our body works, then we can be a bit more precise in how we manage our own stress. Like a lot of people go for meditation and breathing. And if anything is working well for you, my suggestion is to continue. Like if it's going well, if meditation's helping you, if breathing's helping you, please continue all of that. However, for some people, even after meditating, this is at least in my client experience, they come back and say, oh, it didn't really work for me, or I struggle to stay still. I struggle to stay, focused in meditating. And that tells you that your body is actually not in a space of meditating because other parts of your stress system is active. So that might not be the best route for you. So this is us being very sensitive to the needs of our body. Like, is this the right way for me? Is this not the right way for me? And learning what actually stabilizes your stress response system is one of the best learnings we can have for ourselves. So just quickly on this one, okay, our difficulty to, okay, how do we know? This is about, okay, how do I know if, how is my stress response system? Am I in an active stress response system or am I in an okay stress response system? So these are some, it's not comprehensive, and some people may not even experience any of this and might experience something different, but this is just a collection of things I've learned of how does a stress response, an active overdrive stress response system looks like in different people. Now, for me personally, it became very much chronic pain. So the whole body went into like chronic pain, like muscle for no reason, like medical tests were completely normal. And I did the whole series of medical tests, no issues at all. But the pain was still there. So that means the body is, the nervous system is in sympathetic, it's like constant active. Now, for somebody else, it's a digestive issues. I also work with a lot of clients who say they have Crohn's disease, they have, Crohn's, and leaky gut is another word that is used for that. And for others, it's chronic fatigue, lupus, chronic skin condition, or for some people, it could just be difficulty getting a restful sleep. Just to be able to sleep peacefully at night becomes a challenge. And for somebody else, it's change in appetite and food intake. Significant ones, not the small ones. Like small changes in food and all is quite okay. But if there's a big change in how we eat and in our appetite, it's a good chance that our body is operating in a overdrive of a stress response system.
So Deepika, what you are saying is what we usually say is that any manifestation of the lack of ease in our body is disease. So whatever is we are not comfortable with, or we are trying to manage it through. So we overcorrect the feeling of discomfort in one area with overcorrection in another area, which then just kind of doesn't work.
Precisely. I mean, to be honest, all in the effort of feeling better,
right.
All in the effort of being our better self, right? We all are in the pursuit of that, human, right? And the reason why I share this knowledge is because sometimes we don't know how to do that in a way that suits our own body. So we trial and error a lot, right? Until we get to like I did trial and error when I had chronic pain. I went to, and it all helped, to be fair. Nobody, did any damage in particular. However, learning a little bit deeper about our own unique body functions can make all the difference. Once we get it and go, oh, I see it's this, then the solution finding process becomes simpler. We are more directed. And I think that's the main idea of designing these talks and workshops as well, Poonam, is to channel people into getting more accurate help. So good point you said. And we can overcorrect in the other direction, absolutely, because we'd like to, get rid of the discomfort naturally. Yeah. So this is the cognitive part of it. This is where psychology and psychologists pick up on, which is the cognitive part of it. So people with a stress response system, the thought process is also, the brain synapses also changes at a cortex level, which means that the thinking become very much oriented towards negativity. We can't help it sometimes. It feels a bit out of control. Hence, we have our mindfulness practice, our yoga practice that deals a lot with negative thoughts. So this is because the brain goes into, okay, something bad is going to happen constantly, even if there is no external reasons to believe that, right? That's one. Second is, for some people, it's a consistent sense of personal failure. Like, I can't make it, I can't do it. I will always fail no matter what I do. Third one is perpetual thoughts of being incompetent, persistent worry about self-image, very self-conscious. Like, oh, everybody's looking at me, I don't feel good. Everybody's, someone's judging me. And maybe they are. Some people are comfortable with it, others are not. So, and this is exactly like we are shaped by our experiences. And the last one is excessive guilt when we let others down. This is very big as well in relationship, where we feel like, okay, it's very difficult to exist in a healthier way in relationship because we feel guilty a lot. We feel like it's our fault, and we feel like, this is something we have done, and we have kind of a lot. That is also stress activating for many of us. And the other bit, which is also my area of work and interest, is relationship distress. Now, this is how we know, okay, maybe we need to tune in a little bit more to our body. The first one is we find ourselves very irritable. Like, normal irritation is okay, we can give ourselves a lot of love for that. But if there's a consistent irritability, I was talking to one parent, and she was like, she knows it. That's the beautiful thing about us, right? She says, I know I'm irritable. I know this is not okay that I'm treating my daughter this way. I know it. There is such a good brain that is working also simultaneously. But because your body is in so much stress, you can't help it. And then later, when you look back at it, you go, oh my gosh, why did I do that? So that consistent irritability shows up. We can't help it because our body is communicating. It's actually sending us a message that something is active. Something is active. Look at it, right? That's a signaling. And for some people, it is more alone time than usual. I've worked with people who have isolated themselves for 5 years, not wanting to talk to too many people because they can't bear it. Yeah, the stimulation is too much. And then the third one is we feel like nobody's listening. Fourth is excessive feeling of being wronged, like people are always hurting us in relationship. We feel upset and overwhelmed by conflict or disagreement. This is a key one as well. When I work with couples, this one comes out a lot, that we feel like we don't know how to do conflict. If you and I fight, we don't know what to do. We are either overwhelmed or we give up. And how do we exist in a relationship in a healthier way is a huge learning curve, including for me. I was just telling Poonam. So it's a learning process of being this way, of being, learning the skills of existing in relationship, learning the skills of working with our body so we know how to work with this very active stress response system. So I'm going to very quickly, I don't want to miss this because I want to leave you with a technique today, which I found really interesting. And if you want, you can try it wherever you are. If you're watching via YouTube and Facebook as well, I'll do it really quickly because I want to transfer this. This is a very basic exercise that anybody can start to begin to strengthen this nerves, the vagus nerve, which means that when we are stressed and going back to balance, the vagus nerve can be more and more and more, it can strengthen itself. So the switch can happen a bit faster from anxious to more calm. Now, this is not a miracle cure by any means. This is very much a matter of practice, right? Very much a commitment for us to want to do it for ourselves. I want to be clear about that. But this works at a very deep level. It's a very, what we call like bottom up regulation, which means that we just let our body does its thing and we can experience changes as we go, but it does take consistency. So I'll teach you very quickly. This is ideally better done lying down, but because we are sitting, I will just show it to you in a sitting position. But when you practice, you can practice it lying down. So it's quite simple. You can interlock, or you can just put your hand above the other like this, and then you put it behind your head, right? And when you're comfortable, what you do is you keep your face straight, but you just move your eyeball, just the eyeball, to the right, like that. And you can hold that in position between 30 to 60 seconds. So 30 seconds to a minute. So keep your face as straight as possible, eyeball right, 30 seconds. Right? We can do it together, and you can just observe your body's response while you're doing this. Now, for some people, you might feel a yawn come in, you might feel like a sigh kind of thing. And that's a good sign. And if you don't feel anything today, don't worry too much. The more you practice, I think it will get there. Right. So when you're done with the 30 seconds, you can estimate it. No need to be too accurate. And then you can come back center and breathe. Basic breathing, normal. And whenever you're ready, move to the left, the other side. Same thing. Face straight, nothing moves at the face level. Just eyeball and 30 seconds to 60 seconds. Yeah, if your arms are a bit cramped, it's okay. If you lie down, it'll be better. You can come back center when you're ready. And that. So, and if you feel like a yawn coming, or you feel like, oh, there's a sudden relaxation that comes, or there's a sigh, you know, like double breathing, then that's your body's mechanism of moving itself into a relaxed state.
How many times is one supposed to do that? Once or more than once?
Good question. You can repeat this about 5 times. So, and I would leave it up to you, because some people once or twice is enough, because eyeball gets exhausting for some, right? That movement gets exhausting. But if you can do it 5 times at a go, that would be very useful for you to begin with. Yeah. And that nothing, yeah. And it's like I said, it's very much at a body level. So it's bottom up. You just do it and allow your body to do its thing. Yeah. So you can do that lying down and see how it goes. If anybody's trying, I'd be happy to listen to the feedback.
Maybe if you could stop sharing for a minute, Deepika, and show it again so everybody can see more clearly. Yeah.
Will do. Okay. So if we put our hands like this, you can interlock it, or you can just overlap it like this. Hands behind. Better done if you're lying down. We're all sitting, so I'm doing it in a sitting position. But lying down is good. So look straight like this. If you're lying down, means you'll be looking up. So keep your face straight and just move the eyeball. Eyeball to the right side. Just eyeball for 30 seconds to a minute per each time. And breathe normally. Right? Okay, when your 30 seconds is up, now watch your body for the response actually. If you feel like you're feeling sleepy, you feel like you're letting go a sigh, then that's a good sign. That's a sign that your body is doing its thing. Right? And then you can come back center after the 30 seconds or 1 minute, and then give it a bit of a rest. Just breathe normally. And when you're ready, same thing, eyeball to the left. 30 seconds to a minute. You can blink, it's okay. Right, and when that's done, 30 seconds is up. Then you come back center, and you can repeat it 5 times each side per time.
Right.
Great.
What I found was that it is also very mindful, you know, because you're sitting there with your eyes open.
Yeah, exact. Constantly. Yeah. That's a sub, the sub benefit.
Is it okay to do with spectacles on?
If it's comfortable if you can do it without spectacles, without your vision disturbed too much, it will be better. But if it disturbs you, it gives you a headache or something, then you can keep it on. It doesn't really matter.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Okay, I'll quickly go back and see what else is left. I know we are kind of almost there with time. Right. Okay. And this would probably be the last thing I like to leave behind, right? I mean, us coming from a collective Asian culture, I can't help but include this one. So typically when we have, issues, we have stress, or we have a relationship challenge, our not just our Asian culture, even in the West is the same as per my experience, but we come from a collectivist one. So we are a little bit tighter in terms of community spirit. It can have its advantage. Now, the downside is when we're having a real genuine issue, we ourselves, because we are conditioned, we go into self-judgment very quickly. I want to show you this. Actually, it's a research done by Dr. Caroline Leaf on brain toxicity and brain fatigue. I didn't put the details here, but if you want to read it, I can send it to you. She did a brilliant research on what causes brain fatigue and brain toxicity. Now, a lot of it is this mechanism that we have right now. First is we have a genuine problem. Now, if you go back to the child falling down scenario, now that's a genuine issue. You have a fall, your body is in pain. That's a genuine problem. Now, when we come into the judgment side of things, now instead of attending to the pain, we actually go, oh my gosh, I'm so stupid, I fell down. Oh my gosh, I'm so stupid, I shouldn't have done this. I'm such a bad person. Now that is a voice that is coming from our conditioning, our environmental typically. So first is you have actual pain, which is the pain of the body and the whole mental shock of falling down. Then you have this other voice that goes, oh, something must be wrong with me, etc. The brain toxicity is very real. Now, there are actual hormone secretion she has done research on to say that the brain goes into complete fatigue to a point that our prefrontal cortex, which is our logical, rational, the smart side of our brain, just goes off. You know, a lot of children can't learn. If you're working in schools, you'd probably see that. They stop learning, you know, because they are, first, maybe they're having a learning difficulty, probably. And the other side is there's people saying, oh, maybe you're stupid, you can't do it. You know, so the brain goes, forget it, I'm giving up on this, forget it, I'm not doing this. And that's a very real physiological, which can be tested and proven if you're doing a brain scan on these kind of situations. So hence my, you know, my endeavor, Poonam, of running that community for parents to begin with is precisely this, is to give us all a space of, connection, is so that at least when we are facing a genuine challenge, we are surrounded by people who are providing us that first round of, support. And hence I'm advising for that app as well, Poonam, so that we have people who are surrounding us with compassion and with reasonable attending skills before we work towards solving the other sides of our issues, which is the more specific ones, relationship ones, or whether it's work related, or it's chronic pain, or, all this kind of things. So this is my suggestion, if you'd like to take it, is if you'd like to move to a best self in 2021, then this is my thought for you. First is identify the areas of your need, right? Is it a relationship challenge? Is it a chronic pain issue? Is it an eating issue? Is it a parenting issue? What is most important to you at this point in your life? And you can start there. You can start in your biggest areas of need. And the second part we can learn is to learn to work with our body for self-regulation. Now, if you already have a practice that works for you, fantastic. But if you're struggling to find that practice, then working at that deeper level, working with your vagus nerve is actually a more precise way to do this, right? And that you might need some help to begin with before you can practice on your own. Now, this one technique you can already start with, the one that I was teaching you. That one you can take home right away. And the third one is what I was just saying, like, is choosing to connect yourself in a compassionate environment, because that is key. Who you surround yourself with when you're in trouble determines the outcome. If you have a connected, compassionate community who is there to at least listen to you, maybe they can't solve it for you, which is fine. That is already a win, So we need these communities, and I myself built them for this very reason. And then the last bit is professional support to get us started. Like, people have asked me, like, why should I come for therapy? I get that question a lot. And I say, the biggest word I use is co-regulation. I say, because you need to co-regulate with somebody. You need somebody who is not just going to offer you a compassionate listening. That's first step. That can be done by all of us if we want to, be that kind of people for each other. And the second bit is so that you're someone to co-regulate actual stress with. And then after co-regulating, then you can learn the skills, if you want to learn communication skills, you want to learn how do I relate to my family better, then you can learn. But first you need to co-regulate. Your body needs to be in a space to even understand and learn those skills. So that would be my thought on how we can live that. And the last part is compassion, which is to ourselves. Now, if yes, we may not have that community, but we can start with at least being kind to ourselves. We can start with at least saying, maybe I am not very supported, but I can first be kind to myself to begin with. It's true that I have a genuine issue. It's true that I have a genuine challenge in my hand. But moving away from the criticism, we start with compassion and we replace that. And Tara Brach is a lady that I follow a lot. Her talks and her teachings are quite beautiful. She wrote a book called Radical Compassion, if anybody's interested to read. And this is her quote. And she says that, feeling compassion in no way releases us from responsibility for our actions. Rather, it releases us from the self-hatred that prevents us from responding to our life with clarity and balance. So when we actually have an issue, we go into judgment and we go, we should do better, we should do better. Now, my encouragement is to actually shift a little bit and say that, you know what, maybe I don't know how to do it better. I didn't learn it. I'm not in my best self yet, but I'm going to start with kindness. And then after that, I'm going to do what is necessary to get the skills to actually move from here. So she writes a beautiful book on compassion, and I follow her myself. And I encourage all of you who are interested to learn more about compassion to follow her. And this is also another one of her quotes where she says, may I learn to accept myself just as I am, without the fear that if I do that, I will not change. In fact, on the contrary, according to another psychologist, his name is Carl Rogers, he wrote in the 50s, he wrote a beautiful theory called person-centered therapy. And he says, the more we accept ourselves, the more we go, you know what, we are okay as we are. We give ourselves permission to exist. The more motivation we find to actually change. And if somebody else can do it for us, and this is where professional support can be really useful, it gives you that edge to go, you know what, you're okay. Now let's move from there and get you to the best self that you want to get to. So we begin with compassion and we begin with acceptance. And then we go into the next steps of co-regulation, and then we learn the skills, and then we get to that space of connection. So there you go. Okay, I've talked a lot, and this is, it's good to see you here. This is me to you. And this is the ways to get in touch with me, anybody who would like that. And Poonam has information about me as well, so she can also help you with it.
I think, Deepika, maybe we can ask, open it up for some questions.
Absolutely.
And because we have just enough time for some questions, please, you could either just unmute yourself and ask a question or type it there. And and then Deepika can answer your question. Deepika, I really like this thing about self-compassion. After all, self-love is the greatest love of all. And, if we can love ourselves, then it's a great place to live the life from.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Absolutely.
So as Shilpa says that, how do you, well-being is all about feeling relaxed, motivated, and happy. And she comes from a happy place. So Shilpa, that's great. Very, very healthy, very, very healthy place to be. And that's how I think all doctors should be, coming from a place of health themselves. So if you have any questions, maybe you could even send me a question later and we can share it with Deepika. I hope this has been of use to everybody. And Shilpa, I see you've unmuted yourself. Do you have a question you'd like to ask?
No, I just wanted to say it was a lovely session. Very nice to hear, Deepika being so young. I was very impressed to hear, Usually I meet a lot of psychologists and who are talking, but they are middle-aged. I have never met a young girl like you. With so much
I'm not that young. But thank you. But thank you.
It was nice to hear, and the way you are talking about all these things. And I'm sure more people will come out for help. That is very important.
Yeah.
Reach out for help because, as you said, the society, especially the Asian society, takes it as a stigma.
Yeah.
They're not so open to take help for mental health. They feel that no. So if anybody comes to know, it's not right.
Right.
The way you've put it up, I'm sure people will come up. Thank you so much. It's so nice to hear from you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Shilpa.
Thank you. I'm glad to be called young. So my self-esteem has just improved significantly.
And I also would like to add that for the whole of last year, means it's been in March, it will be all of 12 months, a whole year, that there has been a lack of connectedness for us with a whole lot of other people that we used to usually talk to. And there has been that little gap, which we should actually endeavor to reach out. And if you're not reaching out to maybe a counselor, reach out to a friend, reach out to your family, reach out to your children. And I'm sure there are so many things everybody is happy to hear and listen to you. And listening is a great gift that you can give to everybody around you. I think listening is key.
Yeah, we had some comments.
There is another question is saying that I'm getting more and more uncomfortable with social media atmosphere. It really affects my mindfulness and self-worth. Do you have any thoughts or research about it?
Okay, plenty of research. Febby is fabulous. Febby is one of the moms in the community I support. She is absolutely amazing. So yeah, Febby, I mean, I think being more alert on what we consume, right? Because our mind, like I was telling you about the stress response, everything is a trigger depending on how we handle it. Now, if we're already in a state of mind which is not the healthiest, then consuming too much information without being mindful of it can take us to the other side. So we can actually be much more selective of what it is that we see on social media. We don't have to follow everybody. We don't have to, we can filter it based on our need and being attuned to our own body in terms of knowing, okay, this is it for us. This is enough for us. And this is the kind of accounts that doesn't put me in a good state, and temporarily not following them it's actually a wise thing to do, until we learn how to be more regulated. Because really, when I've been working with so many people in this pandemic, we are all different people. What works for me may not work for Poonam, etc. Right? So we really need to know what works and what doesn't work for us. That self-attunement becomes key. Even when using social media, we can't be too free and easy about it.
Yeah, we need to filter what we take in. And, you see so much stuff on social media, and not all of it is relevant to each one of us. We just need to take what works for us.
Exactly.
And please understand that social media stars or people who are influencers on social media, for them, it's a strategy. It is all a scripted offering that they're giving to you. So don't take it as, the entire truth, 100% truth. Exactly. It is a scripted truth, which is, to get them more followers or get them more, revenue. So just be very aware. In fact, Deepika, before we move on, I have Geeta Seth has asking a question that if one is mentally stressed, how much percentage of it affects the physical self?
Oh, it's actually very connected, Geeta. Like I said, right? When your stress response is active, it can just look different. It can be chronic pain. It can be your food appetite changes. It can be the thinking process changes. It is very interconnected as per the way, how I work at it. And the research is quite clear on that now. Right. So percentage wise, it's very intertwined. Yeah. It's not separated. Thought process and body process.
From where you started with how we kind of, self-correct ourselves when there is some discomfort. So wonderful, a really good session, Deepika. Thank you so much for sharing. And, we look forward to having you on our resource and our expert panel. And for everyone who's tuned into this session, if you have any questions that you might have for Deepika, do send it to me and I can pass them on to Deepika.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Perfect. Thank
you, everyone. Thank you so much for attending.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.